All right, and we're rolling. So I decided to talk about some things that I probably have not shared with anyone before, at least not at the level that I'm open to exposing myself on this video and just in general in the future. I cannot deal with the pressure of the frustration of keeping these things within me any longer. And so I cannot deal with the pressure of the frustration of holding anything back within me any longer. It's just overwhelming. It's too damn much. So, as I'm a spiritual teacher, and often people come to me with their problems and issues and the things that they're challenged by, I'm never at a loss for an answer, some guidance. I always seem to be able to give them some direction, and it seems to be helpful and useful to them. I'm not saying I'm solving their problems for them, but sometimes just hearing some insight, hearing some feedback, hearing a different perspective is extraordinarily helpful to us to be able to reframe our situation and then also maybe even some specific pointed advice on things to try, So I will always do my best to draw from my own personal experience and the experience of the clients that I've worked with in the past as to what might work for them and offer this as a suggestion and just try it, see what happens. What's the worst that can happen is it doesn't work, but at least you tried something. You could check that one off the list. Maybe you could try it again in a year, or you try something different in the meantime. So, however, there have been some issues that I have had myself, which I have been unable to find answers for or solutions to. And I've talked to a number of spiritual teachers about this, and so far I've come up empty-handed. So I've been just dealing with this stuff on my own. And it's caused me to feel sort of disconnected and different and lost in a way. And definitely frustrated, because if I knew what to do, I could do it. But when you don't know what to do and you're just trying randomly, and the results are very sporadic, and nothing seems to bring relief long term, it's a little disheartening. But nonetheless, I guess I'll back up and just talk about some of the things that brought me to the spiritual path, some things that I haven't shared with anyone publicly for sure. I maybe haven't shared these things with hardly anyone. But the thing that brought me to the spiritual path, when I was about 30 years old-ish, right around 27, 28 years old, I found myself in prison. And it was the result of my own inability to accept responsibility for my actions. And also, I wanted to escape the repercussions of my actions. And also, I was terribly afraid that I was going to end up alone, that I was going to lose the person whom I loved. And so I didn't really care what the consequences were. But just to give you guys some context, I know whenever I've talked about my past history with the law, people always wonder, what did you do, man? What did you do? So I'm not going to get into everything. It's far too much to talk about. Trust me, I have done horrible things. We could just check off, I haven't murdered anyone, haven't raped anyone, but pretty much everything else probably done at some point. Lie, steal, fight, just attack, avoid. But the things that got me in the most trouble was probably just fighting, and issues with drugs and alcohol, and also thievery. So when I was much younger, when I was in my youth, in my teens, I stole a lot. I had a terrible habit of thievery. And so if you had something I wanted, if we weren't friends, I would take it from you. If I didn't know you and didn't like you, you were fair game. And so for a while, it was like I couldn't even walk into a store without stealing something. Now, eventually I broke that habit. I mainly broke it in my late teens, and then by the time I was in my early 20s, I had completely broken the habit of stealing. And so I just started to realize that no matter how much I stole, it never added up. And like whatever I took, I would eventually lose. I couldn't keep the things that I stole. And so I started to have this revelation that, the way that the universe is set up, it's like you cannot acquire things and amass them through thievery. Now maybe you can, but I can't. I can't do it. It doesn't work. If I steal something, I'll lose the thing I stole, and then I'll probably have some other repercussions along with that. And it's all this coming from this sense of lack of I don't have enough, or I'm jaded by life because life wasn't fair to me. I didn't get the breaks that other people got. I didn't have this or I didn't have that. And of course, that's all bullshit because, everyone has their own unique things, right? I had a lot of unique things that I could have chosen to invest in and build a promising career out of, but instead I felt victimized by life, and so I lashed out by stealing. So anyways, that also led to, actually if we back things up a little bit, I haven't taken anyone's life in this life, I'm sure I have in past lives. And also I have killed animals in this life. When I was a kid, and I was about 7 years old, I think maybe, I found a toad, big old toad, and I threw that fucker up as high as I could in the air and watched it bounce on the ground. And I didn't really have a concept that much of what I was doing. And when I saw the thing with its guts hanging out of its mouth, I did feel a little bit bad. And that's the last time that I really consciously, intentionally took the life of an animal. Now, I felt bad about that for a long time. And of course, I've gone and done good things and positive things, and maybe I've made up for some of those wrongs through the positive karma that I've generated. I can remember at the time when I was in prison, and there was mice in our dormitory, and people were just catching the mice on glue traps, and then they would just catch the mouse and then throw it in the fucking trash. And I was horrified by this. I couldn't sit by and watch these animals just get tortured and die of suffering. So even though everyone was pissed at me and I was putting my own life at risk, I went in the trash can and I pulled that mouse out of the trash, and I slowly pulled him off of the sticky tape. And he was trying to bite me. He was probably freaking out, didn't know what I was doing, but I just was being as careful as I could and gentle as I could. And, while I have 100 other guys telling me what a fucking idiot I'm in and stop doing it and blah, blah, blah. And I didn't care, because this compassion that was in me was stronger than the need to self-protect. And so even though I knew it was probably pointless, as soon as I free this thing, they're going to catch it again and the same thing is going to repeat. But at least I got to do something. So I did that. So I'm sure I've atoned for some of the bad karma that I accumulated in this life and in others. But it went on, and so when I was 16, I fell in love with a girl who was a couple years older than me. We dated for a few months, took her to prom, and it was the first girl that I really, really loved. And then, she was kind of crazy, kind of a narcissist. She used to try to get me to fight people all the time. She would get me into fights. She found it entertaining to get me to fight other people. And so I wasn't mature enough to realize that she was manipulating me for her own entertainment because of her own shit. She was a fucked up person. But, because I had never experienced this love before, this fulfillment of this deep lust that I had to be with this gorgeous girl. And so nonetheless, a few months went by, and in a single night, she broke up with me and started dating my best friend's older brother, who was a total asshole and a lunatic and a psychopath. And she proceeded to do the same thing to him, and she would instigate him to fight me, to torment me, to harass and victimize me and things. And that was a bad time. It was not a good time. I had all this anger, all this hurt, all this pain from the breakup, And then on top of that, I got these people terrorizing me, making my life miserable, living hell. And I didn't have anyone I could really talk to about this that could give me some advice, so I kind of bottled it all up, and it would come out in certain ways. I would start to, I would just talk some shit about them, and then, I try to entrust someone to confide what I was dealing with in, and then, a few days later, what I had said somehow got back to them, and then they would give them more fuel and more reasons to torment me. Well, this went on for basically the entire summer, and at a certain point, I decided that I wasn't going to tolerate it anymore. I was going to take their lives. I had a rifle. I figured all I need is a scope. Put a scope on that bad boy. I'm going to find them together somewhere. I'm going to sit up on a hill, quarter mile away. I'm going to line up the sights, and I'm going to pick them off, and that's going to be the end of my problems. And so I didn't have just a thought about taking their lives. I had a plan. I was serious about this. And I plotted their death for a couple weeks. And I figured this is going to be the end of my problems. And at a certain point in time, I don't know what it was, but I'm sure it was divine intervention, because for some reason, I just had a shift in my awareness, and I realized that that was not going to be a good move, that it was going to create more harm than good, and that it was not going to be a solution to my problems. And so I didn't do that. But that would not be the last time I would contemplate taking someone's life. No, that would happen again when I was about 26 years old, 25, 26, on the run from the law with my girlfriend at the time, living down in South Carolina, living with someone who was a tow truck driver and owner of a tow company, and I was working for the tow company, and sort of got me down there to work for him under the auspices that this was going to be a great opportunity. And then, of course, when I got down there, I didn't have much else going on because I was on the run from the law for beating somebody up, and then for I didn't break out a work release, but I just left and never came back. For those of you who are wondering. And so I did that, went down there to South Carolina, was staying there for a few months, and then realized that I couldn't handle living with this person, that I felt betrayed by this person. I felt hoodwinked. I felt like I was set up, called down here, packed up all my shit, moved everything, me and my girlfriend, to this new area where I didn't know anyone, didn't have any connections, and I was basically completely dependent on this person, who then became a severe asshole, basically treated me like he owned me. And so I rebelled internally against that, but I didn't know what I could do. And my mind was so short-sighted at that point in my life, and I felt so empty and so powerless that I started thinking, maybe I'll kill this motherfucker. I mean, we live out on this compound. I could kill him easily. Again, we have weapons, we have guns, won't be a problem. And, then I can just take whatever valuables I can find, pack up, and move on. And this was seriously going through my mind. Like, I seriously contemplated this. I visualized it over and over again. Again, this went on for a couple of weeks, and then at a certain point, something shifted. And again, I don't know what it was, but I'm sure it was divine intervention. Because I just dropped the idea and decided I need to figure out another way. And so I ended up moving, and I left and went down to Florida. And I lived there for about 6 months. I was getting addicted to cocaine. And again, didn't see much brightness in my future. Didn't know how I was going to continue on. I was basically just doing things that were reprehensible in order to survive. And eventually I got caught in a drug neighborhood with some cocaine, got picked up, and they ran my prints and all that stuff. And eventually the house of cards I had built came crashing down. I was extradited back to Maryland, where my warrants were from. And then I ended up getting a 8-year prison sentence out of it, of which I served nearly 4 years in prison. Being released when I was about 32. Now, when I got into prison, I experienced a radical shift, and that shift has continued since then. So the shift was, I decided that the reason why I was in trouble and why I kept fucking my life up and why everything sucked is because I wasn't taking responsibility for myself, and I was blaming the world, I was blaming people, I was blaming situations on my own life situation. And so because I was a victim, then that basically excused me from responsibility in my mind, and so I could just always blame. But I realized I can't do this anymore. I said, if I keep doing this, I'm going to keep experiencing these types of things, and I'll continue to reinforce my sense of powerlessness, and things are never ever going to improve for me. And I fell on my knees and I cried out to God. I said, God, fuck, I just want to know the truth. Like, I'm not asking you to get me out of this situation. I'm not asking for mercy or some miracle. I'm just asking for truth. Because if I can know the truth, then I can see my way out of this situation. I can see a way to stop repeating these things, which are bringing me back to places like this. And things are getting worse and worse. And I'm sure it was at that moment that my prayer was heard and that the answer started to come to fruition. And to continue on with the story, I was deep into spiritual practice. I was praying all the time. I was meditating as best I could. I was always searching, trying to understand more. I was reading everything I could get my hands on in terms of psychology, subconscious mind, past lives, religion, multiple religions, looking into Islam, looking into Judaism, looking into Zoroastrianism, Buddhism, Hinduism, you name it, I studied it. And eventually I found a course that was called the In Search of the Self was the name of the course. It was created by a man called Ram, who was under the tutelage of Baba Muktananda, who had enlisted him to make this course. Ram was one of his devotees. He asked him to open a meditation center, which Ram didn't feel he was suited to do, but he did it because his guru has asked him to do this. And then he asked him to create a course for prisoners. He said, I want you to create a course. I want you to write down and explain everything I've been teaching you over these years. I want you to put it into a course. I want you to leave nothing out. The course should be so strong and powerful that there is absolutely nothing that anyone would need in addition to this course to attain full realization and liberation in this life. Ram said, I don't know how I'm going to do this. I barely understand what you've been teaching me myself. How am I going to repeat this and write it and be so coherent? And Baba assured him, he said, all you have to do is trust. The Shakti does everything. The Shakti is the energy of God. It does everything. It's already doing everything. You're not doing it. And so he listened and followed his guru's instructions and began to make the course. The course itself was about 10 years long. And I took it for about 3 years while I was locked up. And I continued it for some time after I got out as well. And in that course, it explained the theosophy, the cosmology, then the philosophy of this system of non-dual yoga, which came from a branch of spirituality, philosophical understanding known as Kashmir Shaivism, which is related to Hinduism. It's just a very specific non-dual form of their teaching, where the point of it, the whole point, is not to just hear the teaching, not to understand it, but to have it transform your being until you are living it, till you are a living embodiment of the teaching. And so I began to religiously practice this philosophy. I would read these lessons daily. I would contemplate them. I would meditate upon them. And I did everything within my power to adhere to them as best I could. And as a course of reading into Baba's philosophy and understanding and his yoga, I came across a word known as Kriyas. They used a lot of Sanskrit words in this course, because they said that the Sanskrit words contain the actual meaning, the deep, deep meaning, and the translation is only going to be second rate. It's never going to fully encapsulate the words. So we use these words, and we'll explain the words in depth, but then every time we use the word, you'll just know basically what it means. And so Shakti, the energy of God, the energy of all creation. Shiva, the consciousness of God. These two are different in their manifestation, we could say, but the same in another sense. In fact, manifestation is not the right word, because the way that they look at consciousness is the unmanifest. And everything that is manifest, including all forms of energy and matter, is the Shakti. And they look at these as the feminine and the masculine aspects of God. Shakti being the feminine, the energetic, the movement, the dynamic, and Shiva being the consciousness, the unmoved mover, the unmanifest manifester, the immanent and transcendent simultaneously. He is throughout and yet unbesmirched, unstained by any of it. And Kriya is an energetic release which can take a multitude of forms. The main purpose of it is to eliminate karma, to create a way to undo lifetimes of karma in a moment. Because the compassion of the gurus and the spiritual masters and the compassion of God knew that because we have lifetimes and lifetimes of previous karma, all the shit I've been talking about, the horrible things that I did, the horrible ways that I thought, the ways that I saw myself in the world, saw myself as a victim, as separate, as different than, as just filled with frustration and anger and sadness, loneliness, pain, just searching and seeking and hoping to find a way to escape it, even if that means just being consumed by overthinking or just becoming completely ossified, mind obliterated with drugs and alcohol, anything to escape the pain. But the Kriya is a function, a process which helps to transform and burn through one's karma. So the karma is lodged in the body in these seeds that they call samskaras, these karmic seeds that lie latent in our energetic being all throughout our body and our spirit body. And they're just waiting to be activated. They're waiting to come to fruition, because whatever you reap, you must sow. And so if you did something, you must suffer the consequence, but you might not suffer it here and now. You might not suffer it for lifetimes to come, but that seed remains and eventually it will be born. Now, if my goal is to attain liberation from my past karma so that I can truly awaken and take my seat at God's throne once again to become that which I was born to be, an enlightened being, an awakened one, right? Then the only way for me to do that is to burn through all of my karma. But because I keep creating more karma, this is an impossible game. I'm not going to live a perfect life until I'm a perfect being. And until I'm a perfect being, I'm still going to be creating negative karma, which is going to make it impossible for me to eventually be realized. So the Kriya was developed as a function which could eliminate and burn through lifetimes of karma in a moment. And it would do this by creating a situation, perhaps, by experiencing a feeling, by experiencing a relationship, let's say. So maybe it doesn't happen in a moment. Maybe it happens through this relationship that lasts 4 years or something. And through that relationship, you get to experience all sorts of things. You're experiencing your own limited beliefs, your own way that you try to manipulate this person and things, and then suddenly it all becomes clear and reflected back to you, and you can sort of see the error of your ways, and you wake up from that behavior and you start to take new behaviors. And so that relationship could have been a kriya, a way for you to burn through karma. And so maybe you don't have to get to the point to where you suffer in a relationship with that person for 30 years. Maybe you're with them for a few years and then the relationship ends and you already got what you needed to get from it. It's just one example. Maybe you have the karma which should make you be shot to death for something that you apparently didn't even do, right? Maybe that's just, you did something really bad to someone else in the past and they didn't deserve it. So now it's going to come back to you. But instead of having to lose your life, which would mean you have to start all over again with a new life, and you have to get to the point where eventually you come across these teachings and start to awaken again and then start the process over. To save yourself that time, you might just end up getting shot in the foot. And that's painful and that's terrible, and maybe you can't walk right ever again, but you still maintain your life. And so this is a way that the Kriya can work through you and burn through some of that karma. So infinite ways that this could take place. I've just given you a couple. And then there's also the spontaneous movements of energy. And this also is known as a Kriya. So this is not Kriya Yoga, that's something else. I want to make that very, very clear. This has nothing to do with Kriya Yoga in that way. The Kriyas that I'm speaking about are energetic functions which bring about a burning through of karma, a release of the samskara in such a way as to do it in the fastest possible time for the greatest possible benefit and outcome. And so about 6 years into my spiritual awakening, I'm already out of prison by this time, I started to experience these kriyas in the body, which would move my body, cause me to make these spontaneous movements and jerks. And it was very unsettling. For a while, I didn't know what it was. For a long time, I sort of discounted what it was. And even when I figured out, at least rationally, that, oh, this has to be a kriya, this is what's going on, it still didn't really alleviate the suffering of it. I've still felt like no one understands me. No one understands what I'm going through. And I've got these weird body movements and jerks that cause me to be very, very self-conscious in public and things. And it's this feeling of energy building and building and building in me, and it wants to break through and explode. And yet it can't and it won't until my body jerks. And it was frustrating. It was frustrating. It made me feel separate and alone. And it was extremely difficult. And I dealt with this for years, and I still get them from time to time. They're not as bad. They're not nearly as energetic as they were, because a lot of opening has already taken place. And I've processed a shit ton with this, and I've let go of a lot, and the body has opened to a degree to where the energy can flow through it more easily. But for many years, this tormented me. And at a certain point, I realized that if I drank heavily alcohol, that it would stop these kriyas. And so I became so frustrated with them at a certain point that I said, I'm just going to drink every day. Fuck these kriyas. I'm sick of it. It's been fucking 6, 7, 8 years now. I can't get fucking relief. I can't get any relief. I don't even know anyone to talk to who can understand what I'm going through. There's nobody that I can relate to. People look at me like I'm fucking insane if I talk about it, so I pretty much just don't talk about it. I do everything in my power to try to put the clamp on it and don't let it out. Don't let people see it. And then now I'm just going to fucking drink every day because, hey, at least if I'm drinking, these things don't torment me. Well, you can imagine that created its own sort of problems. Certainly did. And so a few years went by where I was drinking heavily every day. And eventually I kind of forgot why I was even doing it. And I started to have this thought that I'm gonna die if I keep drinking like this. Like, I can't keep drinking like this every day. I wake up, I drink all day, I go to bed. I tell myself as I'm going to bed I should probably not drink tomorrow because I've been drinking every day since I can remember. It's been, I don't know how many weeks. Probably had a clean day one day last month maybe, but that's it's a lot. It's a lot of drinking. And then every morning I would wake up again and I would go through the same thing. And then at night the same thoughts would come, but I would ask myself, well, how am I going to stop drinking? I drink every day. And I couldn't get past that simple mathematical dilemma. How am I going to stop drinking tomorrow when I drink every day? This was the dilemma that I was faced with. And I struggled with that for months and months, maybe years. Eventually I got a handle on it. Eventually I said, I'm going to stop drinking. And I don't even remember what the catalyst was at this point. I have to think. But I remember I stopped drinking for over a year. It was almost a year and a half. I do remember part of what it was. It was one of my friends that I pretty much drank every day with too. He stopped drinking. I think he got a DUI. And eventually he said, I'm just going to quit. I got to quit. And that inspired me. And oh yeah, and then I had a terrifically horrible DMT experience where I died and I was tormented hellaciously by spiritual beings who mocked me, who laughed at me, who basically reinforced every fear that I had at a tremendous level. One of the worst experiences of my life ever. A nightmare DMT trip. You can watch it. It's on one of my channels. Maybe I'll put a link up here if I think about it. But you can search my channel. It's called Nightmare DMT Trip. How a nightmare DMT trip saved my life. And it did save my life in a way because it got me to stop drinking and stop doing cocaine every day, which by that point I was also doing cocaine again every day for about 9 months straight. So as I stopped drinking, of course, the kriyas came back. And eventually the kriyas, over the next couple of years, began to formulate into vocalizations, speaking in tongues, glossolalia, as it's known, glossolalia, speaking in tongues. This is when spontaneous stuff starts coming out of your mouth in languages you don't understand, and not always in languages you don't understand. Sometimes it would come out in English. But the energy would come up, I would feel it build within me just in the same way as the Kriya, right? It's building up. Maybe, my body wants to contort, but I don't let it, and it builds and it builds and it builds and it builds up, and eventually it gets to my tongue, and then my tongue just starts moving, and the sounds come out, and words come out, and full sentences and repetitions and mantras and all kinds of stuff just starts spewing forth out of my body and being. And once again, I have no one to talk to about this. There is no one who understands what I'm experiencing. I think I'm losing my mind half the time. And yet part of me is like, well, no, you're not losing your mind. Like there's a process going on inside of you. You're still lucid when this is happening. It's not like it's taking over my mind. It's not like I lose consciousness. It's just when I let go fully and I let sound come out, it's like, I am Allah, Yahweh, I Allah. So, I feel a little bit better actually having said some of this stuff, having shared some of this at this level. I'm sure people are going to look at me differently if I release this video. I'm sure that it's probably going to help some people. Somebody out there needs to hear this. Somebody out there needs to know that they're not alone. And I'd rather reach that person. I'd rather help that person, even if it causes me to lose friends or to lose respect or for people to think I'm crazy. I don't give a shit. I don't give a shit. So I am going to upload this video. I'm going to share it all, and I'm going to share more in the future. So where am I at with this right now? Hopefully I have a few minutes left before my alarm goes off and cuts the video or some shit. I know it's about to happen. Or my phone rings or something. So if it ends, it ends. But in the meantime, so these Kriyas I've been dealing with for almost 10 years. Holy shit, it's been longer than that. It's been 20 years. Jesus Christ. It's been 18 years since this began. It's been 22 years since I came across the teachings of Baba Muktananda in that course, In Search of the Self. I have yet to meet anyone who has experienced this level of Kriya going on. So if that's you, if you're out there, by all means, reach out. I would love to speak with you. I have seen it happen. I have seen other people expressing this stuff. I've seen one girl who would start singing, and she would start singing in mantras, and I could hear in the tone of her voice. I can hear it. It resonates. I'm like, that is not her. That is a power. That is a force that's working through her. But I've never seen it personally up close do this to anyone, although I'm sure that there are people that it is affecting even more than me. I'm sure that there are people who experience full-on incarnations and things. But nonetheless, I do feel some relief. I feel a relief because I'm not hiding anything anymore. And not so much that I was even hiding it, but that I just wasn't transparent. Because I felt like if I share these things about me, people are going to judge me, or they won't understand me. Or they're just going to think I'm some fucking weirdo, which, I mean, hell, most of you may already think that, so I'm not really benefiting myself in any way. And I think living with transparency and vulnerability is a better way to live. It's less psychologically it alleviates psychological pressure, let alone the energetic pressure that's in me, which is actually alleviated to a degree as well. It's never gone. It's always in me. It just moves through, and it's moving through my channels even right now. If I just really release it, it starts moving my body. And although it used to be much, much worse, I used to writhe like a snake. I used to writhe like a snake all the time. I would lay in bed for hours unable to sleep, just writhing and writhing and writhing uncontrollably, not of my own volition. And I've grown a lot. I've come a long, long way. I've become much, much, much more open, much more free. I've become someone who can speak extemporaneously without notes for a long time and stay on track and make points and influence people. I've become someone who has developed compassion. I've become someone who is able to challenge himself in extreme ways and able to rise to that challenge and complete that challenge. I've been able to counsel others and help them learn how to let go of things, how to release, how to self-determine what their issues are and where they're really coming from through developing a self-inquiry practice. I've taught people how to meditate. I've taught people how to quieten their minds, taught people how to open their energy bodies. And I'm no master. I'm further along than most people are in these areas, and so I can help them get to the next level. And maybe that's all that I can do, and maybe that's all I was born to do. And maybe I'll be a master one day, and maybe I'll be able to transmit full enlightenment to people through a simple touch, a wave of a feather, or a wink of an eye, as Baba used to do, or by simply seeing my picture. Who knows? I'm not so egotistical as to think that will happen in this life. I don't really care. But I know that my work that I've done on myself has created a very, very positive influence and ripple in the world. It's helped other people. And it's undone a lot of the damage that I did when I was younger. And I feel good about that. I feel good about that. But I still feel a lot of frustration. I feel a lot of frustration in my life sometimes. I feel frustrated by this inability to express myself in certain ways to certain people. I feel frustration in being sexually inhibited, in feeling like I cannot speak about certain things, or it's inappropriate, or I might offend somebody or hurt their feelings. I feel extraordinarily frustrated by this. I fucking can't take it anymore. So I don't know what else to do. I figure this might be a solution. I feel frustrated in business. Sometimes, right? Not all the time. I'm not even saying I feel that right this minute, but these things come up. I feel uncertainty, frustration, don't even know if what I'm doing is meaningful. These thoughts come up. Now having this conversation, I recognize that that certainly is not true. That the work I've been doing is very meaningful. But I still experience blockages, holdbacks, things that I can't do yet, and I now have to learn how to do it, and there's frustration there. I don't necessarily want to put the work into. I don't know if I take this action, if it's going to bring the results that I want, or if it's just going to be a waste of time and energy. And so there's resistance to doing that sometimes. And man, one thing I don't resist is making videos. Actually, I enjoy developing content. I really do. Not so much the editing process, this part, this right here. I enjoy this. I like being raw and being real. I like the fact that it might help somebody, that it might help someone's own self-image change, or their own sense of aloneness change, or their own suffering be alleviated. So anyways, I've made some commitments to make some changes. One of them is to be more vulnerable and forthcoming, to remove some of the filter that I have. Sometimes it's good. Sometimes people need to develop a filter. Some people have no filter, and they probably should work at developing one. Then there are some people whose filter's way too fucking thick, and that's me. Yeah, of course, it's lessened greatly over the years. Obviously, I couldn't even talk. I couldn't even talk when I was in my 20s. I fucking would sit there in silence. Couldn't communicate. And I only had two emotional states, anger and whatever. Those were the two ones, right? I didn't let myself feel anything else. I didn't know how to feel anything else. I certainly never fucking cried in front of anybody. God damn, you fucking bet your ass that never happened. And I sure as hell wouldn't post a video where I became emotional. Of course, I wouldn't have posted a video anyways. Well, they didn't have YouTube back then, so. But yeah, I guess what I'm realizing is that I don't need to be perfect in order to help people. I don't need to portray myself as perfect in order to help people. And I'm not helping myself by not owning my shit and being public about it. I don't need to share every single thing. This is enough. This is enough. The fact that I can share it, that's what's important. The fact that I have the capacity to share it, that's what I'm working at developing. So I feel that the intelligence will develop to the point to where I will intuitively know what to share and what not to share, to when and with whom. And I know this has already been developing in me, but now I need to push the needle into the opposite direction and floor it there. I need to pin that fucker for a while, until it becomes second nature, until I have no resistance to being vulnerable and transparent and open, until I have no fucking secrets. And then I can come back to center and be normal. But this is how it's gonna be for a little while. And this is gonna be without any fucking help from substances. So I'm not gonna drink so that I can express myself. I have done that in the past, for sure. Not gonna do it anymore. Matter of fact, I am taking a break. I'm currently on a break from all substances. And I'm gonna keep a documentation of this, of what changes and how it changes and how it affects me, because I know that's going to be influential in this piece as well. So right now I've got some tension in my right joint, hip joint, and it is fucking frustrating. It makes me want to fucking scream! Ah! All right, there. I feel a little better. Well, I garnered some attention. Oh, we've got a puppy here coming to check on me, see if I'm okay. All right, so, and I got my brother here also coming to check on me, see if I'm okay. So I'm loved, I'm not alone, I'm gonna be all right. And I'll keep you posted on how things progress. Leave a comment below, like and subscribe. Actually, I don't give a shit if you like it up or thumbs it down, but god damn it, subscribe to this fucking channel. I need to get over 1,000 people quickly. I'm only at 709 subscribers. I've been doing this shit for 4 years. Come on, god damn it. Subscribe, motherfuckers, subscribe. You don't want to miss this stuff, right? I'm bearing my fucking soul here. All right. That's enough for today. Much love. We'll see you guys on another one of these. Until then, be well. Take heart. And know you are not alone. And it will get better.